Investigating rates of change. A rate of change is a ratio of the amount of change in the dependent variable or output, also is called the Y value, to the amount of change in the independent variable or input, which is called the X variable. Example 1. Eva keeps a record of the number of lawns she has mowed and the money she has earned. Tell whether the rates of change are constant or variable. All right, now here's Eva's record kept in a table. Number of lawns, amount earned for day 1, day 2, day 3, and day 4. Step 1. Identify the input and output variables. The input is going to be here, the number of lawns, that's your input variable. That's X. The output is going to be the amount she earned. That's going to be your Y values. So once again, X is input and Y is your output. Once again, input variable, number of lawns. Output variable, the amount she earned. Step 1, find the rates of change. All right, so first we find the rates of change from day 1 to day 2. Change in the amount of money, that's the Y, so that's on top, is 45 minus 15. 45 minus 15. 45 minus 15 is 30. Change in the lawns, that's the X value, that's going to be 3 minus 1. 3 minus 1. That's going to give you 2. So 30 divided by 2 is 15. Now go day 2 to day 3. So day 3 minus day 2. So that's 90 minus 45. 90 minus 45. And also that's going to be 6 minus 3. 90 minus 45 is 45. 6 minus 3 is 3. 45 divided by 3 is 15. So notice we can answer 15 and answer 15. Next we do day 3 to day 4. So day 4 minus day 3. Day 4 minus day 3. That'll be 120 minus 90 for our Y value or our dependent variable, and 8 minus 6 for our X value, also called the independent variable. So 30 divided by 2 is equal to 15. So the rate of change are constant. The rates of change are constant. $15 per month. All right, now don't forget that the independent variable, in this case, is the number of lawns. The dependent variable is the amount of money she makes. In other words, the amount of money she makes depends on how many lawns she has mowed. Once again, the amount of money she has earned depends on the number of lawns she has mowed. All right, now in example 2, we're calculating slope. And the term for that is M. Calculating slope. The variable we use for that is M. When the rate of change of a relationship is constant, any segment of its graph has the same steepness. The constant rate of change is called the slope of the line. So in other words, the constant rate of change and the slope of a line are the same thing. And what that means is if you got a straight line, no matter what two segments on this line you pick, or no matter what segment on the line you pick, it will have the same slope or the same rate of change. And slope is computed by taking the rise, that's the Y values, and divided by the run, that's the X values. And the slope formula. The slope of a line is the ratio of the change in Y, the rise, for a segment of the graph to the corresponding change in X values, also called the run. So M, that's the slope, is equal to Y sub 2 minus Y sub 1 over X sub 2 minus X sub 1. All right, so don't forget now that the variable to use for slope is m. So when you see m, you know it means slope. So here we're talking about slope. And when you hear me say y sub 2, or y sub 1, I'm actually pronouncing the word sub, S-U-B, sub 1, sub 2. Example 2, find m, the slope of the line. Step 1, choose 2 points on the line. Here, for point 1, for x1 and y1, they chose -3 and 2. And they chose for point 2, x2, y2, they chose -6 and 4. So right here was -3 and 2, and here is -6 and 4. Step 2, find the change in y values, that's the rise, so that's y2 minus y1. And the change in the x values, that's the run, that's x2 minus x1. So the rise, they have y2 being 4 minus 2, and 4 minus 2 is 2. For the run, they have x2 minus x1, that ends up being a -6 minus, that's in the formula, a -3, that was the value of x, and that's equal to a -3. Okay, now so you don't get confused, you should always label your points. In this case, right here is x1, and there's y1. Right here is x2, and the 4 is y sub 2. So when you plugged in y sub 2, that's 4, y sub 1, that's 2, x of 2, that's a -6, and x of 1, that's a -3. You do this so you don't get confused and get your points out of place or reversed. So after computing the rise of 2 and the run of 3, we end up with 2 over -3. So in other words, y2 minus y1 was equal to 2. x2 minus x1, that was equal to a -3. So my final answer then is -2 over 3. Now something that you have to be aware of, see how it's 2 over -3 here? 2 over -3 can also be written as -2 over +3. Notice, a negative divided by a positive will still give you a negative. A positive divided by a negative will still give you a negative. So the overall answer is exactly the same, even though the negative on one is at the bottom and the other is at the top. You still end up pronouncing this as a -2 over 3, a -2 over 3. And sometimes you can see in the book how they wrote the negative sign right in the middle, because it means the same thing. What it means here is they got a choice. They can put the negative up here or the negative down there, but it means the same thing. Okay, now the other way to determine the slope is simply by counting the points. Although this method doesn't work all the time, but whenever you have crosshairs, like here or here, where it's directly center, a lot of times you can just count the slope. So here we go. Rise, that would be 1, 2. That's a +2. Going up 2, so it's a +2 for the y direction. Run would be a -3 because I'm going in the negative direction. So 1, 2, 3. So my rise is 2. Same thing we got right there. And my run is a -3. Same thing we got right there. So my slope then is 2 over 3. Now notice what happens when I count my slope from the other side. Here, I'm going to go down 2. So that's 1, 2. That's in the y direction. Since I'm going down in the y direction, that means a -2. Now here, from my x, I'm going in a positive direction. So that means that's going to be a +3. 1, 2, 3. So my slope then, my rise is a -2, and my run was a +3. Now notice when I went from this side, my rise was a +2, and my run was a -3. And once again, what's a negative divided by a positive? Negative. So my answer is a -2/3. Once again, what's a positive divided by a negative? That's going to be a negative. So my answer still is going to be a -2/3. And once again, the way the book would write that would be a negative sign, and then 2/3. Notice that the negative sign matches up with the division bar on the same level. But all three mean the same thing. -2/3, -2/3, -2/3.